So good lecture. I have a great honor to introduce an art historian, art curator, Batsheva Goldman-Ida from Tel Aviv Museum of Art. She will talk about the artistic milieu of the Idéal and Réalité group at the Parisian art dealer Eugène Blot. Over to you, Batsheva.
Thank you. Okay, well, this is the Trump era, and so we're fed disinformation and misinformation, and I hope in this lecture we'll be able to clear up some ideas that we may have had before. Definitely, I do agree that the Hermetic Brotherhood of Luxor is an incredibly important group. I think Westcott was involved with it at one point. But when we look at the Idéal et Réalité group and think of the art, kind of artists in art that would supplement their ideas, I would like to mention, as you see, that they draw and unite all those who want to participate in the current revival of thought, leading to its aim of the elevation of thought and of art. This combination of thought and art refers to a very specific group of, a very specific kind of art called symbolist art. That was very common in Paris, Brussels, and Munich in the late 19th and early 20th century. The kind of art that is expressed by this symbolist art expresses mood and interaction. The figures are generally not individualized. They're more like archetypes, and so sometimes the works are very restrained. This artist, Constant Montal, was in Brussels, and he taught one of the artists I will speak about that came later to Israel as a symbolist artist. And Pierre Puvis de Chavannes is, of course, an excellent example of this kind of art. And it was only in 1941 that Jacques Blot, the son of Eugène Blot, had an exhibition of this work of de Chavannes. And so we may be able to see through this that there was an effect of the group Idéalité and Réalité on at least the son of Eugène Blot. But we would be looking for this kind of work. Wait, did I talk about the Idéal? Okay. The kind of work of Gustave Moreau, for example, where they use pre-Christian and early Christian concepts and use them sometimes in very unusual ways and free interpretation. However, none of these kinds of works are found within the group of artists associated with Eugène Blot and Idéal et Réalité. None of this direction is at all a part of the art group. You do have Rodin, in the sense that Camille Claudel, who was his protégée and also mistress from 1884 to 1894 or 3 to 1899, did represent a certain kind of use of emotion. In other words, expressing emotion in art that is, in a way, a kind of symbolist rendition. And Rilke, Rainer Maria Rilke, who was a secretary to Rodin at one time, wrote about him and went into that idea of the emotion. And another concept related to symbolist art is called Gedenkmalerei, Malerie, thought painting. That idea, which I would expect to find in this group of thought and feeling, idea and feeling being expressed in art. And it would have been really great if it had been part of the movement. Here you have a poem by Rilke that refers to the work of Rodin. And you can see how it can be interpreted as a way of revealing the inner workings of the heart and mind in visual art. Each spot is like an eye that fixed on you with kindling magic makes you live anew. Now, there was a group of symbolist artists in Brussels. I mentioned Constant Montal, he was a painter. But Victor Rousseau was a sculptor, and he developed this idea of Rodin of incorporating emotion and feeling and inner thought into statuary. And it's interesting, I'm only going to give one example of this Israeli artist called Wolf Ravitsky, or Ze'ev Rabban, who came to Israel in 1912. He was educated in Munich at the time of Steiner. He was in Brussels at the height of symbolist art and studied with Montal and Victor Rousseau, and he was in Paris. He came to Israel in 1912. He was an anthroposoph, a vegetarian, a Freemason, a medium in seance work, and altogether the supreme example of what we would expect to find in a group of this type. And you can see in this statue where he tries to incorporate the feeling or thought processes of the person he is showing. Other examples that we might look for is Tadeusz Richter and his wife Bronislava Janowska, who later he remarried, but this Bronislava, both of them were part of a Rudolf Steiner group in Munich and came to Israel. Richter came to Israel in the 1920s. And you can see by the work of Bronislava that there is this symbolist element. And by the way, Kupka is also considered a symbolist artist. It's a very nice, I think he did a series as well on the Golem. He illustrated. And that's a whole other topic in Prague. But the artist that we're not able to hear about today, who is a perfect match for this kind of art, is Johannes Eduard Hollenberg, that I hope we do hear about, that fits into the symbolist model of painting. Now, when we move on to Eugène Blot, this is what I meant by misinformation. If you try and look him up in the Wikipedia, you arrive to this person who had 4 children, was in decorative arts and started a decorative arts school in Rennes, and is just not Eugène Blot. He's not on Wikipedia anywhere. So maybe now we have an opportunity to write him up, because this is confusing. And so I would like to introduce you to Eugène Blot, who is amazing. And as an art historian, I must tell you, it's not polite, but I began drooling when I read his book and the kinds of artists that he was in touch with. It is insane. Now, I want to correct here that Claire passed away at the age of 83. In 1966, because it's a mistake here. 1977 is a mistake. And Jacques in 1960, I don't know about Denise. This is the right Eugène Blot. This is about the age, we're looking at him at 25, when he began becoming interested in modern art. And his father had a bronze casting factory, which he continued. But in this book, he expresses the joy and the interest that he had when he saw modern art, which means living artists at his time, the avant-garde, neo-impressionists, in other words, the post-impressionist period, and the Fauvist period. These are the new artists that were just coming on the market. Renoir is already old hat. Cézanne, Sisley, Armand, Julian Ming. You'll see works by him. He's less known, but he's a very good artist. Pissarro, Van Gogh, and Monet, and of course Manet. All of these artists were new in the market. Okay, now I want to talk about the connection of Blot in his period. He was friendly with all the major important dealers of this period. Volal was a major dealer. Bernheim Jung is another major dealer, all in Paris. Duran Ruel, another one. Paul Rosenberg, you may know. Blot was in touch with his father and his two sons. Alexis Rouault is a less well-known. All of these major dealers were friendly with Blot. And they exchanged works. And here you see the name of Blot on this album of prints from the Vollard Gallery, Ambroise Vollard. Now, why do I say it's really amazing? Because although Eugène Blot is not in Wikipedia, if you open any site of the Metropolitan, the Courtauld Art Institute, the Tate, the Musée d'Orsay, all of these places, and you write Blot, Eugène Blot, you will find his name, because many of the major masterpieces that we're familiar with were in his gallery before they went to these 4 or 5 main distributors. And another very interesting thing is that Eugène Blot was the founder of the Société des Amis du Musée de Luxembourg. Musée de Luxembourg is at present Centre Pompidou. When, at this period, the early 20th century, they were only showing living artists. It was a completely contemporary idea. After they would receive the artists, if they happened to pass away or were less contemporary, they were pushed on to the Louvre or to another museum. Luxembourg was the key site. And the Salon d'Automne is also, where he was the president of the Salon d'Automne, was the alternative to the official academic Paris Salon. So it's completely cutting edge. And Blot had this foundry, in the Marais quarter on Rue d'Archives. And that was his father's, and he continued it. And his son also continued for a while, Jacques. But pretty soon he decided, because of his interest in painting, to move closer to the gallery of Bernheim Jung, which is a very important and major gallery until today in Paris. And on, I guess, your right, you can see the gallery of Blot. And an interesting thing is, which we'll see a little later, but I'd like to tell you about it now. In 1913, he held their exhibition of Utrillo. And a writer called Max Gott, a French art critic, wrote a little talk about his experience of this gallery. And he said, well, I was at the National Museum, and they had, different works by different major painters, Velasquez and other people, and I was thinking, oh, it's so boring. And then I come by to Eugène Blot, and it's a very sweet and gentle atmosphere that conquers you on entry. And then essentially you find especially Eugène Blot and his good word, rude and frank, and his loves of Zola and Renoir, Pouy, and Julia Men. Sounds better in French. Sa bonne parole rude et franche. And so he had a nice little shop. But essentially what he did was he would purchase the works from the artists themselves or someone very close, a friend of the artist, including Toulouse-Lautrec and others. And then he would buy it for hundreds, 200 francs, 300 francs, 500 francs, sometimes 600 francs, and then he would sell it to the Bernheim Jaune, or Vollard, or Rosenberg, or Duran-Ruel. He would sell it for thousands. He would sell it for 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 10,000 francs. And then these major dealers would sell the same works for millions.
Wow.
Poor guy. This is the corner of the Bernheim Jaune gallery. See, it's very busy. So, for example, he was very friendly with Armand Julien-Men. Guillaume, excuse me. Yeah, my French is not so. All right, so he did very lovely works. You know, you can't. And he's friendly to Blot. He gave Blot 79 of his works to sell, and he sold them, you know, at his prices. And then one day, he saw this work at, Blot had this work of Van Gogh. But he saw that at Bernheim Jaune, they had this Guillemot that looked really great, a snow scene. So he goes, all right, let's trade. Who can believe this? Till I found it, you know. And he himself writes in his own memoirs that he does remember that eventually it ended up at the Pinacotheques. He had other lovely works by Bonnard. This particular work he gave to Vollard, he took it back, and in the end he gave it to his son Jacques. I don't know where it is now. It's still considered a private collection. But he had plenty of Bonnard. Monet, he got it for 500 francs. You can imagine when it hit the museum how much they paid for it. He talks about his Toulouse-Lautrec that he loved. He really loved this picture. He got it for 600 francs. By the time it got to Musée d'Orsay, it had already gone through Monsieur Courtauld, and it was in the millions, no question. Cézanne. One day the widow of Cézanne came by. He gave him 25 watercolors to take care of. Where are they? This one's at the MoMA now. This is another Manet. I mean, I'm telling you, drooling. It's insane. It's insane. This Monet, can you imagine? Gave back. Rosenberg got it. Degas. Rosenberg again. This Manet he really liked. But if you read through the Havemeyer collection, you see that it's written that he's one of the original owners of this work, as well as another Monet that I wrote on the bottom, a fishing scene, also Monet. Now he claims in his memoirs that he had the original watercolor for this work, which nobody knows if there is a watercolor. I've never seen or found the watercolor. There is a second edition at the Courtauld. Maybe he was referring to that. It got taken by someone else, as well as this work. It's now in Spain. And during the Dreyfus affair, he was a Dreyfusard. And it was a lovely thing. And his main bronze pupil, Camille Claudel, didn't stop her relationship with him because of that. And so he was able to, in the end, market 13, maybe even 18 of her bronzes at the foundry. We'll see about that in a minute. Another thing, in 1917, Blot was at Auvergne with a friend, and some artists got in touch and said they'd like to use his gallery for a show on Cubism. Why not? It's around the corner from Bernheim-June. He's on vacation, vacances. So, sure. So all these artists, Glaze, Duchamp, all the important Cubist artists, Picasso, they're all there. And meanwhile, okay, Rivera is another example. And meanwhile, Rodin came by, just by chance and picked up a Gauguin for 300 francs. That's what went on. Okay, now I just quickly, I have another 10 minutes, want to tell you about Camille Claudel, which is a wonderful, though tragic love story with Rodin. And here again, we find this reference, although I don't know if we can say it's a real art reference to Idéal and Réalité, but definitely for Rodin and for Camille Claudel, they had statues that were called thought. This, you can see the one of Rodin, and the Waltz is a famous work. This work, all of these small bronzes were produced by Blot. The U-log is also called Deep Thought. And this, you see the closeness of the work of Claudel and Rodin, which you can, even now, there's a room in Musée Rodin that has her work. And looking at the gallery of Blot, you can see that work. I don't know if it's on the right. You have these two works, L'Imploration and Abandon, are both in his store. Okay, as an artist, this is the only work that Blot submitted to the Salon in 1889. It was a medallion. But from a very early age, he would draw. He was what maybe we would call a Sunday painter. From 1909 to 1935, there are about 10 albums at the home of Yoel Temelis, about 700, 800, maybe even 900 small watercolors, all from different albums that are not so small, 20 by 14 about. At a very young age, he would draw on his own. Very rarely he would actually sign the works, like this one, I guess. Wow. I agree with him. It looks pretty good. Yeah. They're all watercolors.
This is Camille?
Blot, Eugène Blot.
And this is his?
His original works, yeah. There are like 800 of them, and I'll be happy to send you. These are all fishing scenes at... they're in the, with the son of Yoel, the son of Pascal, Yoel Temelis, in Modi'in, and I have photographed a lot of them. I can send to you the photographs. They were found in 1978 when the house in Normandy that we'll see in a minute, that it was sold. And afterwards was taken down, dismantled, and some kind of new hotel was built there. So these works were done in Normandy, and they're all dated and numbered in each album. Although Yoel took them apart, and he has like 40 on each wall. So got some IKEA frames, and it makes a house. So. But we can feel, I do want to say that we can feel Eugène Blot's love for this group of artists, Utrillo, even Cézanne a little bit. He's not there, and I was frankly embarrassed initially when I saw the works, but now that we understand him a little better, we can appreciate his feeling not to share these works with the public, but to continue for over 30 years painting steadily these small watercolor studies. And in Courcelles-sur-Mer, this is where the house of the Temenlis was. It was like a summer hotel. And for example, Pascal married Ramon in this very lovely story that it was very hot in Paris, and Ramon said to her mother, "Oh, let's go away, to Normandy." And she called up Pascal, and in a very cosmic way, usually he said there's no room, and all of a sudden he said, "Oh, there's room because he can move in with his grandmother." And she came, and 3 months later they were married. So there you go. Claire had to read all the books of Louise before she actually got married. So there you go. So although we have these beautiful scenes, even in snow time, and I'm showing a Pizarro that actually he had. I'm sorry to misspell Pizarro. Okay. So, for example, Utrillo has Paris, and Blot has his own Paris. Not bad. Not bad. Carefully chosen, by the way. Utrillo, but Blot. Sicily was another of his artists, so you get the feel. And then all of a sudden we have a whole group of sketches that I think, and maybe Eva will be able to tell us for sure, is depicting the famous house of Louise and Claire Temenlis, where Théon stayed and was very active summer hotel, something like this, but I don't have a picture of it. But these scenes seem to me to be depicting that place. And so we have a lovely artist, very, very astute art dealer, but he always said to himself, "Trop tôt," too soon. He loved Daumier when everyone thought he was a caricaturist. He loved all these artists when they were so cheap. You could just buy them by the dozen, actually. But still by the Metropolitan curators, he's called an amateur. Which, by the way, I think in French, I'd like to advise with you, I don't think amateur has the same derogative connotation as in English. But still, he is an amateur. But this is what we have from him, and this was his artistic life. So, thank you.